right, are we good? So,
Great. Good.
if your business is too dependent on you, franchising can turn your know-how into a system and your system into an asset. Today, we'll map exactly how using our V3 growth system. Today, our guest is Neal Weiss. He's a franchise consultant from the Franchise Consulting Company. That's a great name, right? He is a franchise growth advisor to help you to systematize your business so that you can then duplicate it in with other people. So we are Nate and Simone. We talk all things marketing. And before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel so that other people can see and hear these great conversations that we're having and learn to systematize their businesses. And I'm going to shut up now and we're going to get started. Hey, Neal. Hey, Nate.
Hey,
Hey. All right. Neal, I was just
see you
looking
all.
at, we were just chatting a little bit about where you came from and all that and how long you've been in the business and whatnot. And I just saw somewhere that you studied at SUNY New Paltz. Is that right?
That's correct. Upstate New York a little bit. 90
So, bit
miles
of
outside of New
trivia.
York City.
Okay, bit of trivia. I was there last June for a bike ride, which was interesting. It's
Oh,
very
yeah.
hilly there,
Ulster
I
County is a
found out.
beautiful area. There's great mountain climbing. It's
It
gorgeous
is.
there. Summertime's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was something. Never been that part of New York, so it's
Nice.
a good
Not far from
experience.
the Hudson River.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. Um, anyway, so welcome. Yeah. So why don't you give us a little bit of breakdown how you got here, what got you into franchising? We can start there and yeah.
Sure. I'll make it brief. 30 years ago, I answered an ad living in Atlanta, and a company, which is a carpet cleaning business, is a franchise, and they brought me on board to sell franchises. Uh, since then, I've worked for about 5 or 6 different franchises directly, selling and licensing franchises to individuals. And one of the last couple of companies I was working for, uh, I was working with them in Atlanta, and they were based in California, Southern California, Orange County. They asked me to move out and become part of their franchise team, actually, a management team, which I did in 2005. Been in Southern California happily, avoiding all that weather you guys are dealing with
Yeah,
since
yeah.
2005. Stayed with them. They actually stopped franchising. I worked for 2 other franchises. The last one was a retail store called Good Feet Worldwide that sells and produces customized orthotics for people's shoes. It's a retail location. So I've been
Nice.
in retail, I've been in service, I've been in a number of different arenas. And 8 years ago, almost 9 now, a friend of mine started a company called the Franchise Consulting Company. At that point, we represented starting maybe about 50 different franchises my customers were individuals looking for business ownership. And I still do that. Now the franchise consulting company has 350 franchises that we represent in every category out there. In a little bit, I'll give you some examples of some kind of outside the box franchise you never think about. Because
Hmm.
franchising really can work for any type of company. And since then, we now have I was one of the first 10 consultants. And since then, we now have 200 consultants that do what I do every day. We have 2 yearly conferences. We just came back from a cruise this past Friday through Sunday to the Bahamas. It was everyone's stuck on a ship. Our winter one is usually a cruise to the Caribbean. And then the summer one last June was to the Dominican Republic. We've been to Cancun and others, and we get all of our consultants together, many of our franchisors together. It's a lot of networking, learning about things about each other. It's pretty cool. It's
Hmm.
fun. Business right up.
Nice.
So,
So, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
no, so we represent all types of franchises that we are looking for individuals, and we'll talk about how do I find these individuals? What do I do to generate leads and things along those lines. But about 6 years ago, we had companies coming to us that were already franchised that weren't franchised, that were businesses, and so what we were doing. And then we know there are companies that actually help people turn into franchise. Well, we work with several attorneys that do that, and we developed a company called Franchise Genesis. That's our sister company, owned by the same people, but all Franchise Genesis does is work with business owners who want to grow and scale their business through franchising. And those are two things. They're very different, but they're related to each other. There's correlation because as we're the 200 of us are bringing in potential franchisees on a daily, monthly basis, many of them may be interested in the new franchisors that we're turning in the new business that we're turning into franchises. So kind of one hand washes the other.
So give us a quick and dirty 1 minute definition of a franchise, if you don't
That's a good
mind.
question. So franchising, the franchising is based on a system or a model that the person that buys into it should follow. People ask me, why do people fail? I come up with usually two reasons, and I follow up with a lot of customers I work with. One, they're undercapitalized. Two, they don't follow the system. Not necessarily in that order, but it is a system to follow. If you're going to be so much of an entrepreneur, you're going to do it differently. Don't invest in a franchise. Understand that they'll hold your hand, follow, give you ongoing support. They've done it before and they've proven that it works. That's why you're buying into a franchise. Most people that buy into a franchise don't usually have experience in that industry. Many of them don't. They like it, whether it's food, whether it's fitness, whether it's automotive, just a sampling of some of the franchises we have. And we have franchises that are brick and mortar, many of them a bit more expensive. And we have franchises that are home-based, van-based. Some could be even part-time as an owner where you hire a manager. So there's a lot of variables that when I'm showing something potential franchise to invest in, I got to get a lot of details from them. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I explained to someone and I use as an analogy is that it's a lot like being a realtor. If you're looking to buy a house, I'm going to ask you certain questions. Well, where is it going to be? What's location's important? How many bedrooms? How many baths? What can you qualify for in a mortgage? How much money can you put down? Those are all kind of similar questions and much more than I'm going to ask someone investing in a franchise. Because if and when I show them some businesses and they invest in one of them, that franchisor pays us a referral fee. There's never a cost to my customer. My service is 100% free, whether they buy or whether they don't invest. Either way, it doesn't matter. Some people go through the process, and it could take a month or two. Looking at several companies, doing due diligence, talking with franchisees, going to visit them. It takes time. At the end of that process, some of them got said, franchising really isn't for me. It's too hard to work. Can't afford it, blah, blah, blah. But they make that decision before they invest a few $100,000. That's a good thing. I'm okay with that.
Nice. Okay, so are there minimum, signals that an owner should see before they explore franchising? And I guess in this case, before they explore franchising for their own business and trying to turn it into a franchise?
Okay, yeah. So that's the other side of the business. And people ask me how much. It really depends on who I'm talking, where the information is coming from. Sometimes it's 60% working with businesses turned to franchise. Sometimes it's 60, 70% individual. So it kind of 50-50 depending upon where things are at. When I'm talking with an owner, number one, we'd like to see them be in business at least a year, have one location that they have proven profitability, because they got to show that to potential franchisees that they're going to sell to. We've worked with a couple of startups that were just so unique and so specialized that were just beginning that we bring in, but that's got to be special. They've got to have, some profitability that they've shown so that can be put into their documentation. Because to become a franchise, it's regulated for a business to turn into a franchise, regulated by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. There's a lot of requirements, a lot of legal documents. They must put a franchise agreement together. It's going to be over 100 pages. Some of it's boilerplate, but a lot of it's to their specific franchise and what that business is all about, and what they're going to charge, and all sorts of specifics to that. We have franchise attorneys that work with our business owners of how to put that together. The whole process from they say, okay, we teach them all about it and what it costs and what it does and what we do. They make a decision. Yes, if they would do it on their own, it would probably cost a little over $100,000 to do everything: manuals, training programs, franchise agreements. There's a lot involved. A lot of documentation, a lot of legal work. There are 18 states that require additional legal work than all the other states. They're called registration states. We know all that. The average person starting a franchise is clueless to that. If they were to do all this on their own, they'd spend about $120,000 or so. Because this is all we do. This is what our company specializes in with Franchise Genesis. We have two programs. We just started a low program. Our initial program is about $65,000 to everything put together, and there's a lot of marketing, and helping them find franchises and all that. We also own a franchise expo company. We do franchise expos in different cities on weekends or once or twice a month. We make them, part of that. We do advertising and marketing. We also have a franchise journal magazine that they get free full page ads in. So some of that marketing stuff, we've decided if they think they could do that on their own, they don't want to. We have a lower investment level of about, I think it's 37,000. Just started that. So very, very affordable for someone to do this with us as opposed to doing it, on their own. So yeah, they have to show profitability. We like to see them. Well, one location is fine. If they have a few locations, that's great. They're showing more success. And they also have to understand, and we spend a fair amount of time in this, that running the current business as opposed to running a franchise where you're helping people franchise their business and, making them successful is a totally different business. Some people keep their franchise, their current business, so they can kind of have a touch of what's going to put a manager in there. Because running the franchise, once you start putting a couple of franchise on, giving support, ongoing training, it's a big deal. It's a lot of time. And it's a very different business, being a franchisor as opposed to being a business over that franchise. Make sense?
Yeah, because there's a whole there's like a whole other side of your brain that has to be activated when you're not just doing it yourself. You're teaching and guiding others to do it
in
and be
your
able to be
business
successful.
before you franchise, you have employees, but when you have franchisees that you brought in, they paid you, 40, 50,000 to train, to learn about it, and another 100, 200,000 to open their business. I mean, you got some responsibility there. Mm-hmm. And the bigger you grow, the more the responsibility, the more complaints you get. And you got to have dealing with that is different than dealing with just your employees.
So you not only have to train them to do what you do, to run the business, right? And like you said, they're not employees, they're owners.
Exactly.
And so there's a different mindset there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you have to supply them with everything they need to be successful.
And you get to the point 10, 15, 20, 30 different franchises. Now you're going to have to build up your support and your infrastructure. But now you have 20, 30 different opinions you're dealing with every day. And, I'll give you kind of an average in franchising as general. It doesn't matter whether it's McDonald's, Subway, or, the little franchise down the block. You're going to have a third of your franchises that are at the top of the top, doing great, happy mostly all the time, helping other people. Then you got the middle third, is they have good days and bad days, but they're profitable. And then you got the bottom third, which are kind of struggling sometimes. Some can pull out of it, some end up leaving the business or selling it. That's kind of standard in franchising because it's who some franchises try to be more selective with who they put in, but you never know until they really get there.
That's interesting, especially when you consider that 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So 30% are actually top tier, according to what you just said.
Yeah.
I guess it's all kind of relative, right? But there's probably a lot more, just kind of regular run-of-the-mill businesses compared to
there are some surveys that have done in franchising versus not. And you're absolutely right. 95% are going to fail in that first year or first 3 to 5 years. Yeah. Franchising, the scale is just higher. Because of the support and everything they're getting, hopefully, deciding who they're going to bring in or not. Some companies are bringing more people that maybe they shouldn't, but the success rate is much higher in franchising because of the model, the systems in place. And if they follow it, they're usually going to do very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
So a lot of our audience, we're trying to reach business owners who are in that under 10 million range. So this might be a big question, but where does franchising make sense in that case versus having them open, maybe other just kind of locations or continuing on the path?
For a business owner that has a business, been running it for a year or more, showing some flexibility, and it doesn't really, we even have done some work with some nonprofits, it's feasible. We've done some things with manufacturing. Name some categories. Okay, restaurants, obviously food, automotive, fitness, healthcare, staffing, restoration. We've got a ton of restoration companies, probably in our industry. We have 12 or 15. They all do well. Home services. I must have 40 to 50 home services franchises. These ones are already in our inventory, and they all do something different. Some maybe do roofing. Some may do interior, kitchens or closets or garages. All types of home services, plumbing, electric, repair work. I mean, so we have a lot of home services, and many of those are less expensive because they're not brick and mortar. They may have a van and that you lease it, so it's not as big of a startup. So it could be the category, but it's really more about um, the individual running that business that we talked about before that has the right mindset of what it takes to become that franchisor. So there really isn't a magic wand to say, oh, these businesses are better as franchise than these. It's the person running them, right?
Interesting. Okay, that's
And
interesting.
I'll give you a few since we're kind of on this topic a little bit. Let me give you a few outside the box franchise, and we have quite a few. We have a robot franchise. I think he's based on the Midwest somewhere, but
You say
I became
robots?
a robot. If you became a franchisee of this robot franchise business, it's called iRobot. It's very cool if you look at their website. You're kind of buying or leasing the robots from the company who programs and does everything that they need. They use them. Where would you think? Let me ask you, I always throw it out. Where would you think you could use a robot in a business? And it's a real business.
In a business, probably packing and shipping.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, warehousing.
Warehousing, absolutely. And the company programs the robots for that company. It gives real specifics. With AI, like we talked about earlier, it's not that hard. They do it actually in some restaurants. They serve the food. They do it in hotels for room service. You're going to see more and more of this. It's pretty cool. There's one. So let me give you another one. It's called Forever Charge. It's EV charger stations. So Forever Charge has an electric company that will go. If you became a franchise, the electric company, you will find the locations. And now these are big locations. These are not little mom and pops, 2 or 3 EV charger stations. These are places where you can have 10, 20. It could be at a football arena, a shopping center, an apartment complex, a hotel where you can have 10, 15, maybe 20 chargers.
Yeah.
I mean,
airport parking lots. I've seen those.
They're paying for it kind of like they would air, like pumping quarters in there.
Yeah, they pay for the kilowatt hours that they buy. Well, a lot less than gas, but they pay for the kilowatt hours.
Yeah, wow. and not because I used to drive an electric car, so it wouldn't be you're putting coins in the meter or anything.
It's all
you download and it's an app.
Exactly.
You get the app, you put money on the card, and your app is connected to the machine.
Right. If you're the owner of that location, let's say there's 10 machines. Every time guns in plugs in, those kilowatt hours start turning, you're making money, a percentage of it. The company's making it too.
So I'm assuming, that's going off into
I'm just trying to give some examples. We have another one that's exploding.
Yeah.
We have this garbage removal system. If you go a restaurant or any commercial place that has a big green or black bins, this new company is called Subcontain. It's all underground. You can put it in on top, but it's very, very cool. They're going out the door like hotcakes. Subcontain. Doesn't smell. We have some of them right next to a restaurant. They don't even know that it's that's garbage containers because
nice
around it. But
does that get rid of the rat problem?
Yeah, if you can hide it, that's good.
Not at all because of the.
That's the kind of business you want to hide.
That's
from public view, really.
Just to give you a couple of examples, and we do have some really outside the box things that are successful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Awesome. Okay, so part of the things that we talk about on this channel are thinking about your business as a system. Somebody actually defined to me, they asked me, well, what is it? What is a business? And of course I rattled off, well, it's got all these things, right? And he said, no, like the simplest definition of a business is it's a system, and just like any kind of a system, you think of like a car engine, for example, which is a system. If anything goes out of whack, it's not functioning properly, and getting it to the point where it's actually functioning properly is the key, right? That's there's a big hurdle there that a lot of businesses have to overcome to get it to where things are moving smoothly. And that's part of like what we help businesses with is, and we break it down over like three different categories. So one of them is visibility. So that's like, making sure that you're attracting the right people, that you want to have find you, it's your ideal client profile or whatever that is. but also visibility internally in the business as well, because you want to have your team have access to the information they need when they need it, right? So that's key. Um, are there any, are there for as far as franchising is concerned, are there any kind of signals that you look for or that tell you that a business concept is, maybe discoverable and could be attractive to franchise candidates?
Yeah, so you're asking on both sides. So on the owner of that business side, one of the keys is that they're already showing profitability. They're excited about their business. Now, any business owner can grow their business by opening up more locations, hiring more people. Those two things, when they think about it, can become detrimental in a way that it's very costly. If you search brick and mortar to open up another
Right.
location, very costly. It takes a lot of time finding a location, building it out. I mean, it takes months, sometimes over a year. And then
Yeah.
every employee that you now hire that are your employees, that's a liability, each one. So when they look at that and they go, well, I could have 5 franchises in a year or 3 or whatever the number is, but I don't have the liability. I don't have the cost to open those. That's what they're looking at in terms of viability or visibility as terms of what they're doing. And yes, there's cost involved. They have to have some employees that are going to help train these people and help support them, but nowhere near if they're doing that themselves. So they can grow exponentially quicker. And a term that I use a lot is when we talk to potential owners that are looking to be a potential franchisor, we say, what's your big picture? What's your long-term goal? And a lot of them is sometimes say, I'd like to sell my business, turn it over to my kids or sell it, when I'm ready to retire. And that might be 10, 15, 20 years down the line, depending on where they are, even longer. Well, let's say 15, 20 years down the line, and you have 20 or just 20 or 30 franchises, a couple a year, which people have done a lot more than that, but this is very conservative. The value of your business, because they're getting a percentage of the revenue of every franchise they bring in. That's part of what franchise is about. It's a royalty. The value of that business has grown 100 times what it was when they had one store. So that's what they're looking at, someone that kind of gets that big picture. Because that's kind of what franchising is. Yeah, it's focused in, it's lasered in on that one individual, but it's the big picture of everything going on around that. That makes sense? Can I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, here, just to kind of maybe elaborate a little bit, here local to me, there's a pizza place, right? And they tried to open up a second location just 20 minutes away in a different town, and they folded very quickly. Um, and I've always been curious about what happened there. What what is this a common story that you hear, or
Yeah, it's funny.
people try to
I
make it
have a
work,
few
or
pizza places I'm talking to now that one guy in
yeah,
Virginia's got 5 locations really spread out. Part of that, it comes down to how you manage that growth, and are you a good manager of that, and still being in touch and if you have obviously you can't be a manager at every location. You only get to so many locations such a period of time. So you have to have the right people in there helping you manage each location. It's not easy.
yeah,
And then when you talk about cash businesses, what does that mean? Well, money goes out the back door without you noticing it. So you got to
mm,
really be careful of that. And that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
what people, and whether it's a pizza place or any kind of business, if you can't oversee it directly, that's a problem. So that when you bring a franchise in, each one of these, let's say it's 3 franchises you bring in a year or two. Well, they've got much more of a vested interest than you having a manager in each of those, maybe cheating you,
Mm.
right? Think about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a difference between an owner and somebody who's managing it for somebody else,
Now,
and
some people are
they don't
fairly
feel that
smart.
ownership.
Yeah, now there are some that are
Not gonna treat
successful.
it the same.
If they have the right person, Simone, and then they give them a little piece of the ownership, that's the right way to do it. And
Yeah.
that does happen, but not as often as you think.
I
I
guess
guess a lot of owners, they don't think about that. They just think, okay, I'm gonna install somebody here. They're gonna manage it for me, and I'm gonna get double the profit that I'm making now, and
mhm.
walk away,
What
walk
could
away
what could go
clean or
wrong,
whatever.
right?
But
Because it works
yeah,
here.
what
Why
could go
couldn't
wrong?
why wouldn't it work there, right? Like, and this
Yeah.
person is familiar
Because
with it,
the
but
place where it does work is because you're
yeah,
there all the time.
yeah,
Whether it's
that's
an ice cream
interesting.
store, whatever it is. So if
Hmm.
you can duplicate yourself into someone else. And again, probably
Which
the
most
most
people can't,
successful,
right?
yeah, most
Yeah.
They say
successful is
like,
that you're giving a piece of the action if they're a good manager.
Yeah.
yeah,
But having that visibility, like it's a known commodity, it's a known entity in this community, but not necessarily over here. So maybe all of a sudden, if they haven't figured out what it takes to be visible, to be, known, like what is the magic formula
Yeah,
there? It's
whatever the
not easy
business,
to transfer it.
whatever the business category is, Nate,
Yeah.
you as the owner are going to be doing certain things, whether it's joining the Chamber of Commerce, working with the schools in the area, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's hard to duplicate that in other locations. Now,
Right.
the whole idea of franchising is that you are duplicating that with other people who are owners. That's
Yeah.
that's the basic key.
Interesting. Okay. Let me think here. Let's hmm.
I did have a question earlier.
Good.
Yeah,
Because you
so
had mentioned that there were some companies that had decided to stop franchising. So I was wondering, like, what comes into that decision?
there's
Um,
several things. It doesn't happen that often, but there are reasons. There's some kind of reorganization that needs to go on. Sometimes some companies grow so quick and they don't have the infrastructure to support them. They'll come back to us. Their inventors say, "We're going to pause franchise. It might be 6 months, a year or two." That's one reason, and that's a good thing actually, because they want to support what they have out there instead of seeing the big picture and big eyes. Say, let's just keep adding franchises. So that happens to us, throughout the years, several franchises. Then you have some franchises that, are a little bit too selfish, is maybe one of the words, where, their franchise fee is unreasonably high, or more so, they have a royalty. During the pandemic, a lot of franchises that didn't go out of business, just like retail, businesses, because they really pivoted, and many of them stopped charging royalties to their clients. I mean, because they weren't doing business. So if the franchisor gets what the franchisee needs and can help them with that, that's going to make the difference. Then I go back to the other two reasons. Why do some franchisees go out of business? Not the franchisor, but franchisees. It's two things I always say. Not following the model or system, and being undercapitalized. Now, one of the number one ways I've seen this in a lot of different franchises, where a franchisee, one of the ways where they cut back, the first thing is usually on advertising. That's a death spiral. That's what happens a lot.
and they're depending on the franchisor to really be doing that. Is that right?
Well, the franchisor, when they grow to a
guess it
certain
depends
size,
on
they pay a
model.
royalty to the franchisor, but then there's also an advertising royalty. It's usually 1 or 2%. When you have enough franchises, 20, 30, 50, and there's a money there, then they'll do some either regional or national advertising.
Okay.
Domino's, when they supported the halftime on the NFL, and this was many years ago, by that time they had 1,000 franchises.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I had a client actually briefly who was attempting to open a taco franchise that was originated in Ohio. They were trying to open it up in Texas. And I guess maybe he didn't understand fully
Sure.
how particular Texans are about their tacos,
Right.
but
No, of course.
You have to know
and
the
like
area very, very well.
it was
Yeah.
absolutely every square block had a taco joint on it, right? Like the competition was fierce in that case, and they ended up not doing too well. But one thing he told me was that the franchise did not support them as far as the marketing was concerned. They had to
Right.
kind of pick
And
up on
that's
another on their own.
and just use the word support. The franchisor, by contract, has to do a certain amount of support. And sometimes that could be an area where the franchisor has some financial issues themselves for whatever reason, and that support starts to lack. That affects franchisees. Now, sometimes there have been a few, and these are rare instances, where the franchisors have stopped supporting the franchisees. And franchisees still stay in business. They can now change their name, or they keep the name because people know it, but they can continue on their own if they've grown enough. One
Yeah,
of the franchises I worked for was a decorative glass franchise. They actually produced a film that went on the glass, and they still continue. They stopped bringing in new franchises, so they're no longer franchising, and they had they had franchisees around the world. They continued to sell the product to them, but so they're no longer franchised. So they stopped collecting royalties. So the franchisees still mostly bought the product from them. So they still make money, but not as a franchise.
So they were
Something like
still
that
able to
happens
use.
occasionally.
So they end up
like
becoming more of a distributor than a
Exactly.
franchisor.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
okay, yeah,
Mhm.
but they
That
still had the
doesn't,
name recognition and the brand
yeah,
recognition
it
that
doesn't
they
happen a
were able
lot,
to
but just
use.
that's an example.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Okay.
If you would ask me, well, which is more detrimental? I mean, which happens more often, a franchisor going out of business or a franchisee? Well, it's going to be a franchisee because there's so many more of them, and those are the ones that don't follow the system. I said before, we're running out of money, but it's a small
Yeah.
percentage. Bottom line, I tell someone, no matter what franchise they look at, I'll usually show someone 3 to 5 different ones. We'll spend a lot of, just weeks, if not months, going through them all. Um, you must follow the system. Their system is there because it works. When you talk to franchise, and that's the other thing, the last thing you're going to do before you make any final decisions is talking with numerous franchisees that are doing it, good, bad, and indifferent. And do you see and talk to people that'll like you? They'll put you in touch with them. And do you see yourself doing this? Do you see this person who is an engineer and you're an engineer doing this business, and why? Very, very
How
crucial. That's the due diligence, a very important part of looking at a franchise.
if a business is, interested in turning their model into a franchise, um, what is the like how are they finding people who may be interested in buying into
Great
that? Is
question.
that
So
yeah.
let me just back step for a second, Nate. The process when I work with someone who's a business, maybe franchising, versus an individual who wants to invest in a franchise, totally different process. And much longer and more a little bit difficult process of an individual going through the process. In both instances, I'm kind of a middleman. Like I said, like a realtor, I'm turning them over and I'm having conversations with the franchisor they're talking with. But it's a much drawn out process, a lot more going on. Because they're maybe looking at
Mhm.
multiple franchises and takes more time. When I'm working with a guy who owns a business and he's clear of what he needs to do and goes through our process and learns all about it, doesn't take all that long to really get it. Talk to some of our people who have already done it. They can make a decision fairly quickly, a couple weeks, a month or so. There's not a lot involved. So, they can turn that business now. It does take about 4 to 6 months to do all the work to be legally become a franchise. All those manuals and training programs and franchise agreements and back and forth with attorneys. Yeah, it's still pretty reasonable, but then they can be up and running. Now, getting to your question is how do they find franchisees? So there are companies that do, other companies do what we do. Most of them do one or the other. There's a lot of consulting companies that work with individuals turning, and they have a lot of the same franchise we work with. They work with multiple consulting companies. There are few companies that turn businesses into a franchise. Some attorneys, that's all they do, but they don't do all the other work. You got to go here to find a person to write the manuals, this person to, put the training programs together. That's why it costs them all, because it's not all under one roof. So we're the only company that does both because of the synergies of that. So when we have a company that wants to turn their business into a franchise and they go through the process of what we're talking about and they're up and running 4 to 6 months, now they're legally a franchise in the eyes of the FTC and the legal work has been done. Two things with us. Number one, because there's 200 people bringing in potential franchisees every day, not all going to look at these new businesses, but some of them we can feed right to that new business immediately. I mean, hey, we have 200 people bringing people in. We're going to show you people that are going to be interested in your business. So that's one way. The other thing is I mentioned we do that franchise expo. It's called the Great American Franchise Expo. By the way, we do 1 or 2 a month in different cities. Attract and they for the first year they don't have to pay a penny to come to it. And if they can't come personally, we will represent them at a booth. And there are some marketing programs that we do that will help attract franchisees for them. Some of those are optional, but the things that we're doing that are successful. Otherwise, if they go to a company that does all that work for them, whatever it costs, 50,000, 80,000, whatever, and they're now a franchise, and they say, good luck, go find franchises. We don't do that. It's a huge, what do? Oh, they go to the Chamber of Commerce. They'll put ads in certain magazines. I mean, they got to get their name out there. And that's why our program is so successful in attracting franchisors because we're helping them find franchisees.
Hmm. Gotcha. So yeah, it sounds like there's a tremendous hurdle to becoming a franchise, and I guess maybe that may seem kind of daunting for a lot of business owners in that case. Do
Yeah,
you
but I wouldn't
do you
say
find
that's
that?
a tremendous hurdle, but there are steps they need to go through. And
Yeah,
we spell those out really clearly. Obviously, it's in writing in a contract of what we do for them. But then before they ever make any decisions, they're pretty clear on it of all the different
Hmm.
things need to be done to become a franchise. I wouldn't call it
Yeah.
daunting, but that's why we're there to
Well,
hold their hands through.
it's probably more
It,
daunting if they're trying to do it on their own.
Yeah, oh
yeah.
yeah. We
And
have
yeah,
several.
for
We
you,
have
you're very experienced in it. So
Yeah,
for you, it's
yeah,
like, okay,
that's true.
this is
But
daily, this is old hat kind of a thing. But
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know all the steps
no,
that need to go
and I
into it.
deal
But
with
for
new
somebody
people.
brand new,
Right.
they don't know.
When I deal with a new brand new person, I kind of got to go back to that and say, okay, here's the process. We start slow. We got to do this,
Mhm.
A, B, C, D. And I kind of give them a basic overview. But then I actually turn them over to my associate at Franchise Genesis, who will then do a 35, 45-minute webinar, not just talking about it, but showing them this is what we do. And they say, these are the companies we've done it for. You're going to have more questions. Come back after that, talk to some of the people we've done it with. And it's a process that you go through. They get it pretty quick. They'll have good questions.
Yeah.
And some people, it's not right for them for various reasons. They should just continue what they're doing, whether they're going to grow on their own or just, kind of plot along as a one company location.
Mhm. So, okay, what I've heard a lot a lot of what you have talked about has kind of revolved around systems, processes, SOPs, and having that kind of stuff documented. That it falls under the category that we talk a lot about of viability. Is the business viable? Can it run without you? Does it have legs? And in order for that to happen, of course, you need to have stuff documented that other people can follow pretty easily and say you can just kind of hand
Exactly.
it over, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
I'm explaining it right. You're listening right.
yeah, good. All
That's
right.
very good,
Um,
Nate. You got it.
so
If half the
so
people
just
I
to
talked to
kind
got it that easily, it would be
of
great.
Yeah,
so
well, we're
to
systems
dig
people.
yeah
Right.
to
Right.
dig into this a little bit. Do you have unit economics that you're looking at in order to that have to be nailed before considering franchising? Like, are there economic considerations? Like you said, is it profitable? I mean, is there like a certain percentage? Like, do they have to be
Yeah, I
profitable
mean,
for a certain length of
we
time?
drill
Like, I don't
down.
know.
We will drill
Yeah.
down to them so we can look at unit economics exactly, and what is it? What are their costs in the business? What does it end up becoming the profit margin, gross profit margin, net profit margins. Now, in the franchise agreement, there's 23 items in the first section of the franchise agreement. That's about the first 60 pages or 30 pages. So, item 19 literally is what's called the earnings claim. Some companies will put in what their gross revenues are. You can get further down to figure that out. Some will actually put net profits in the highest stores, the lowest stores. So those we have to know that because that's got to go into the and we got to look at that before we say, yeah, you're a really pretty profitable business. Your profits, 8%, and you only gross a few $100,000 a year. It's not a franchisable business. But if you're
Mhm.
grossing $500,000 to $1 million and your profits, 25 to 30%, that's more like it, which is more along the lines of what we're seeing quite a bit. So we
Gotcha.
look at those numbers: gross revenues, gross profit, net. What are your costs? What are the net profits? EBITDA, right? And how much of that are you willing and able to disclose in your documentation?
Gotcha. Are you well, part of what you're doing, I'm assuming, is you're helping them to establish their training and sales enablement and those types of systems.
Correct. The
Do
SOPs, yeah, and they may have it in place, and it may
That's
be
what I was
pretty
gonna
good.
say. Like,
It may be pretty
do
good. It maybe needs
is it
tweaked, or there's some companies who
okay?
the only training they have is for employees, which you can use. We got to turn this into training for franchisees
Yeah.
and a model for that. And maybe that's going to hire more people as they grow. So they've got to look at
Mhm.
the longer outlook. So, yes, we're doing all of that for them. That's part of our
Okay.
program. Our fees cover that. And that's part of the contract that we do that with.
So the companies that are already thinking in that way, kind of that reduces the time perhaps
It
to,
can.
yeah.
It can. Well, I'll tell you what's happening in this 4 to 6 months. Manuals, training programs, franchise agreements, work with attorney. So, but they're still running a business, and we're very cognizant of that. So,
Mhm.
some of the work in the franchise agreement is boilerplate. Every franchise has some, but there's a lot of specifics to that business. Franchise fees, royalties, what the business is. That's all written into the agreement. So, what is their ability to work with our people and our attorneys? And that's really comes back how much time can they put in on a weekly, daily, monthly basis to get this done in whatever time frame. We had probably one person that did it in maybe 2.5, 3 months. That's quick. A few a
Wow.
little over 6 months, but on average, within 4 to 5 months, they should have it all done if they
So
make themselves available.
they have to have like a certain minimum amount of a team that's able to kind of carry the burden, the major burden
That's
of the
correct.
day-to-day
I
activity so
was
they can
thinking
actually
about
step
that.
back and do this.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, like wouldn't
Yeah.
it would be kind of good to have a franchise department in your company, kind of,
or that's part of
there's a
what they'll
few key
develop.
people that are responsible
Yeah.
for
Correct.
either
Mm.
recruiting, training, just helping out the franchisees, just
That's a great
period.
comment, Simone, because part of what we do, what we offer them after their franchise is we have another company that works as the sales side. I forgot to mention this, is the sales side for about maybe a dozen franchises.
Mm.
Some are from ones that we brought in, some that just come to us. Hey, I have a franchise, I need help selling. And they go out and get the leads and all. Now they get like 50% or more of the franchise fee, but you're not doing any of that work. You're doing the work once they come on board, and you're looking at the long-term picture, which is the royalty.
Mm.
Mm.
So that is another way that we can help them to grow their business is through what's called the franchise sales FSO, franchise sales organization. So they say, hey, I don't have I don't have sales background. I have the people. Some companies will
Yeah.
do that for a year or two, and then say, hey, we're going to take it in house now. We got it. We can do it. Some had it in
Mm.
house, saying it's not working. You guys do it for us. And there's a number
Mm.
of other franchise sales organizations do this that we work with actually, but we
Yeah.
have our own also. So that's another
Gotcha.
thing that we can offer them. Why we've
That's
come
an
with this. No, there's fees
kind
involved, and that's why we have
mm.
two price ranges for them. I mean, the
Gotcha.
cost to do with us is very nominal. That we just lowered
Yeah.
this price to like 35, 37,000 to get this up and running.
Mm. Mm. Okay, good. So let's see what else. I'm assuming that you're working on, getting the part of the SOPs and the systems and that kind of thing is working with the marketing, the sales, the
Yes,
delivery, all that kind of,
that's
yeah.
all put in writing. That's
Yeah.
part of the
Gotcha.
agreement of what we do for them.
Gotcha. All right, perfect. So, one of the third kind of pillar that we talk about here is value, building a valuable business, right? Which I'm assuming is part of one of the outcomes here that we're going for if we're going to franchise something, right?
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, I feel
and
like if you're
so
franchisable, you should be,
that's a valuable
um,
business right off the
that's a
bat, right?
valuable
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
right? It is now
Yeah.
duplicatable.
Yeah.
You can come out of it, somebody slot somebody else in and they can run it,
Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. Now, the value, big picture, which I mentioned before, and then you look at this, is where do I want to be 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that time frame is down the line. That's the value, is the value that this business is worth as you bring on 10, 15, 20. I mean, there are some franchises, they're happy to bring on 15, 20 franchises, not 50 or 100 or 200. And we have some that have hundreds. But they're happy with 20, 30, 50 franchises. The value of that business has exponentially grown tremendously when they're just one store. And they're happy. And maybe 10,
Yeah.
15 years down the line, someone will come to them and buy it for all the work they put into it.
Yeah.
That's the
Is
value. That is the value. That's
yeah.
the big term value. Obviously,
Yeah.
making money year after year as you grow it is additional value.
Yeah.
People may look at it the other way, that's upfront money, and the additional value is the big picture. It's just up to the mindset of where you see this going.
Mm-hmm. What specifically then makes a franchise system more valuable, would you say?
In
Than just
terms
like
of what?
well,
In terms
just
of what?
as opposed to a business that is not being franchised, especially when we're considering from a potential buyer's perspective. What would make what makes the fact that it is a franchise more appealing?
Well, we kind of addressed it. You're talking about. That's what I want to clarify.
So we're looking
Someone
at
looking
like
at investing it as a potential franchisee, or someone who's taking their business into a franchise.
I think, well, we could probably do both, I guess. But if someone is looking to buy into a
Yeah,
franchise,
it goes back. That's what was the first answer I was going to say. It goes back to the systems and models in place, and the
Mhm.
uh, um, part of the franchise agreement, the openness of what you can make with the other people are making, and do you see yourself doing that and talking to those people? So that's
okay,
being translucent
Mm,
about that and transparent.
we have like we
Hold
have
on,
like
hold on, Simone, one
kind of
second.
can break it down.
When I
Okay,
talk
go
about the
ahead.
word transparency, that's one thing that if you go buy Bob's business on the corner, it's a glass business or whatever it is. There's no
uh,
transparency of what he shows you. And a lot of times,
yeah,
not all of it. So franchising, because of the contract and what's required by the Federal Trade Commission, is what usually should make it quite transparent. That's really important.
gotcha. Yeah.
Sorry,
Right.
Simone, to cut you off.
No, no, that's great. So yeah, when it comes to that transparency, like we're talking about these transferable assets, right? You're as the franchisor, the originator of the business, you are creating visibility. When you're creating a franchisable business, you're creating visibility into your brand, your processes, your training, your IP, your all your compliancy stuff, your frameworks, all of that has to be transferable to now your franchisor, or no, your
The other way
franchisee,
around.
right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
there's
You hit the nail on the
centralized
head.
data, centralized knowledge base. Your scorecards with your franchisee, like how are each of them doing? How are we gonna be scoring you
Well,
based
what's the
on your day-to-day
KPI, right?
practices and your keep yeah your
Yeah.
KPIs, all of that, right? Um, you know, it's predictable because it's systemized, it's now predictable. There's quality control, there's brand governance. Um, and so all of these things make that business much more valuable. I feel like when it comes to whether you're franchising a business or not, all of these pieces and processes that um, all these assets that get put into place are needed for a business that maybe you want to exit or you want to franchise. I think there's a lot of crossover and similarity there. Wouldn't you say, Nate?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
correct.
absolutely. From what I've heard so far, but I can't. I keep thinking back to, for example, not to undermine or put any franchises down for per se, but we've heard horror stories about Subway, for example, as a franchise. Why would people continue to buy into this? This is what I don't understand.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you also have a lot of multi-unit owners, whether it's 3, 5, 10, or 20 or 30 subway owners that are very, very wealthy because of it. Same thing with
Yeah,
McDonald's. I mean, it's like
it must
everybody
work for
says,
some people, I guess.
well, it's like I
You know,
said, you got
it
that,
comes from the
one third,
top,
one third, and
it's
one
like that
third.
leadership.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
So
like you
like,
said, one third will do very, very well.
yeah,
I forgot, like there's this Pareto principle, the top 20 and then the bottom 80. There's always gonna be that the top 20% that are just gonna take off and do
yeah.
very well. And it doesn't matter. Everybody will start at the same place. Everybody's getting the same information, they're getting the same support. Everybody paid in the same
Exactly.
amount in order to buy into this franchise, but some are going to do very, very well, and some are just not. They're just not, just because maybe part
But
of it could be
If,
environment. You
yeah,
could be in a
could
bad
be.
neighborhood, or you can be in a
That,
neighborhood where
but a lot
people
of
don't
it's going to
want
be
sandwiches and
what's
they
the,
rather
yeah,
have be in a sit down restaurant or whatever.
yeah.
Just could be.
But there's also a tremendous amount of risk involved because you are kind of beholden beholding to the franchisor. And if the
Correct.
franchisor decides to pull the rug out from under you and change things up, you're kind of stuck. So,
And that does, that does happen in a franchise.
Does
And I've
happen.
been to some
Yeah.
franchisors, when you use the word pull the rug, their agreement, the franchise agreement is geared towards the franchisor. There's no question about that. So
yeah,
let's say for some real reason they decide we have to change our name or we have to change our lighting outside or the signage, and they have the right to do that. And some franchisees have problems with that.
yeah,
That's part of the relationship, franchisee franchisor. That is a good point, Nate. And to your point, Simone, what Nate mentioned earlier, have a taco business that's doing great in the Midwest, and you go to Texas, there's a problem there. That happens.
Mhm.
You as a franchisor have to be relevant to know things like that.
yeah.
So you
Seems like
have
there
to
needs to
be
be,
educated enough to
yeah,
be able to educate your potential franchisees to say, okay, well, our business does well in environments like this,
Right.
but not in
mhm,
environments like
And
this.
there are some
yeah,
franchises that do well everywhere because with the food one. I mean, if I had I was a franchisor and there was a takeout Chinese place, and I would try to open up in Chinatown, New York, or San Francisco. That's not going to work, right? And that's an
yeah,
Yeah,
example
yeah,
of what you use. But I have,
yeah,
I believe a vent. It's called Vent Wizard, where they'll go in and clean people's vents from dryer vents because it can start fires. I mean, they do a few other things too, but um, you have where are they, and the territory is based upon number of homes. Okay, some
yeah,
territories are based on population. Depends upon what the business is about. As long as there's homes there, it doesn't matter what part of the country,
you're
hot,
good.
cold, northeast, southwest. It's available. And
yeah,
we have pet businesses again. There's pets everywhere. It's several. A lot of different types of pet business: training, boarding, food. Again, wherever that the customers are, that's where your locations are going to be. And in most instances, and we look at that when they're going to franchise. In most instances, we see the viability of it. We go forward.
Mm.
yeah. I think one of the it's funny, speaking of, locations and your customers and whatnot, it's funny if you go to Boston, for example, the kind of like the stereotype is that you walk out of a Dunkin' Donuts, look down the street, and there's another one. It's like they're on every
It's
corner
like that with
everywhere.
Starbucks too.
Yeah.
They're
So, but
almost
it's
like
like,
next door to each other in
No,
some
it's like
cities.
that. It's like that in New York, but not. I'll use pizza places. They're not
yeah,
franchising most of them. So and they now do have successful Pizza Huts and Domino's in New York, and there's a gazillion pizza literally on every corner sometimes.
yeah,
So part of it
yeah.
boils down to the product, marketing, etc.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, good deal. We're about at our time here. Our let's see here. I guess there's another segment here to talk about with risks, red flags, and readiness. Are there any like what are the most common reasons that a franchise fails in the first year?
It's kind of similar. They have, there's a system in place for them to follow. Uh, or one, sometimes growing too quick. Their eyes are so big, they're bigger than their stomach, so to speak, and they're just growing
Yeah,
too quick. Now, in that instance, they might feel a lot of them will pull back the reins, kind of slow it down. But sometimes it's kind of, they had great things, it's growing, 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 but now they're not giving support to the franchisees. Franchisees talk to them, the franchisees sue them, and it gets into court. It gets crazy. So that, a
mm,
little growing too fast for franchisor. We help to try to control that.
mm,
So that's a good thing because they think, man, the more I put on, the quicker it goes. Um, Again, the franchises are also being undercapitalized. It happens, not a lot, but it does happen. You want to know that they have the capitalization behind them. There's sometimes franchisors that have huge amounts of money behind them, and capital companies and such.
okay,
Um, those are two things that kind of just come to my mind in terms of on the franchisor side.
okay. Is there a minimum amount to budget in the first 6 or 12 months for a particular an interested franchisor, let's say?
Oh,
Is
I'm
it,
not
or is it
sure
just kind of
about that.
depends?
Well,
It's
well,
like,
they have to have a budget together on a yearly basis and how they break it down of what it's going to cover. Because remember, most of the franchisors are still running at least one company that's profitable, that's bringing in money. So they're not as concerned about profit for the first year or two until they continue to bring in franchisees. But they're going to have a budget that's going to cover that side of the business based upon a certain amount of growth of franchisees each year. And that's going to come back.
So
and they have to have something behind that.
They're plowing some of the profits back in is the way they're kind of
course,
looking at it.
yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because remember, it's long term. It's not get rich quick scheme. It's long term. If they don't take any money out of the franchise side for the first year or two, it's not a problem as long as they see the growth of where it's going.
Okay.
But it's not a huge amount of overhead. It's just infrastructure. It's not, and some franchises that are selling products to them, as warehousing or a distributor to them, there's more profit there too, besides that, in addition to the royalty. So, because there's so many different categories of franchise and what they're doing. Each franchisor is going to be a bit different of how they put their model together and their budget.
So would you say that growing too fast and kind of having the wheels fall off is a good sign that they need to pull back? Is that the
they'll
the
see
one
that.
sure sign?
There are gonna be some red flags that pop up that don't ask me which way they're specifically, but they'll say, "Oh, this is a problem here. This is a problem here." Yeah. No, we need to hire more people to help be part of our infrastructure to support what's growing. They usually should see that in advance because they can have an idea. So that doesn't happen as often.
But you guys having the experience that you do can kind of help them to,
yes,
think through those.
We've done this a few hundred times, so we kind of with different categories.
Few hundred.
So we can help them with that. Now, some franchisors completely pull away from us, do it all on their own, and they're not getting our advice or anyone else's advice. And sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. As a percentage-wise, most of them are successful.
Okay. All right. So if a business, a franchisor, potential franchisor, wanted to know the fastest, least risk way to validate their business's franchisability, what would you say?
Yeah, so learning what our process is, number one. That takes a few phone calls and asking the right questions, reviewing our franchise, our agreement with them. It's not a franchise agreement; it's an agreement with the franchise consulting, franchise genesis, and the customer, franchisor. Talking to companies that we've done it with, asking straightforward questions. Did they do what they say they were going to do? Those kind of things, and come back with any questions. And having, the actual fee that they pay us on the top end, which includes all the additional support and marketing, is about 68,000. We suggest to have another 30,000 because they're going to need to do some marketing. They're going to need to add some infrastructure. And again, if they're short on funds, it's usually that's kind of a red flag. Right. But we do have some funding. We have some funding that's a zero interest for 18 months to help them get some funding. So they have to have some of that money though on their own, at least 50% of it. So yeah, talking to the franchisees. Oh, very important. And we help them with this. So is doing a kind of a market survey of the competition. What's going on in this market and who is doing what you're doing regionally, locally, nationally, in terms of how's that going to affect your growth. That's crucial. They'll do it and we'll do it with them. Gear them towards how to do that. It's important for them to do. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
But like I said, if you look in New York City to open a pizza place, there's pizza on every corner. Yeah, probably not the best idea.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, good deal.
That's special in that area, huh? You're just kind of one of many.
Yeah.
We have some fairly unique businesses that we talk to, and so we don't run across that often.
Yeah. They just started opening up some Chicago deep dish pizzas places here in Indiana. So
you're not that far from Illinois. So.
Yeah. They don't have much competition down here though, because they're not on every corner like they're up there. But anyway,
I lived in Chicagoland, and the two main ones, which are downtown, they franchise called Uno and Due. Those are the two big deep dish pizzas.
Yep. Lou Malnati is another one like
right. Yeah,
I think I'm getting hungry because it's lunchtime. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right. So I'm talking about deep dish
breakfast.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You're 4 hours behind, 3 hours behind.
Great, great.
Um, okay. So, very good. All right. So let's do a little recap here. Um, Visibility, you want to clarify your positioning, make sure that you have that nailed. You're looking to create consistent demand. You want to make your key metrics visible to your team, as well as, make sure that you're actually following them. You can't grow what people can't see. Um, Viability, obviously, this is a key. You want to align your revenue operations, your marketing, your sales delivery, your customer retention, so that your revenue repeats without depending too much on you. And value, you want to turn your system into an asset with documented processes, strong brand standards, predictable royalties, ideally, and replicable success, essentially. So, Simone?
Oh, thank you so much for watching. This was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I feel like that we've learned that turning your business into a franchisable business is a lot like the same things that you have to do in order to make your business valuable for your exit as a founder, if you wanted to. So we want to remind you to subscribe to this channel. If you learned something today, like I did, put your comment in the comment section and let us know what was your biggest takeaway. What was that aha moment for you? Are you thinking about buying a franchise or turning your business into a franchise? I feel like just let us know what you think. And we also have an assessment, the growth ceiling assessment, to diagnose whether your business is too dependent on you and where your bottlenecks are. Where are those gaps in your business? So if you want to know more about that, click the link to take that assessment. And of course, if you would like to get in contact with our guest today, Neal Weiss, I think I'm going to start calling him the franchise guy because it sounds like all
You
up
will be the
and
first one.
down whole, the whole,
Yeah.
um, yeah, like the whole, everything that you want to know about franchising, he knows. So, and he knows and does. And you can reach him at his website, thefranchiseconsultingcompany.com. And we'll put that link into the show notes. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Neal, for being here. And we'll see you next time.